Cover 2 podcast coming at you live on this beautiful Wednesday morning, live from the OC Rock Radio studio at Saddleback College. I'm Nick Nenad.
I'm Jared Smith.
Hey, Jared, we got a special show today.
Oh, do we?
Oh, yeah. We got a week until the 2018 NFL Draft. One of me and Jared Nye's favorite events of the year. So guess what we're going to do, Jared, today?
We're having a little mock draft edition, Cover 2 podcast.
Yes.
Mock draft edition.
Yes, we are. Mock drafts today, so we're going to go through the entire first round. Because that's all really anybody cares about. If you care about the second round, you probably have no life. So, all joking aside, we will get to our mock draft in a second. We're kind of going to go 10 picks at a time or something along those lines. But before we get to that, there was some big news in the NFL this week that affected Jared dearly. I know it hurt his stomach when this happened. Dez Bryant has been released from his dear Cowboys. So we'll let Jared shoot a little bit here, and we'll let Jared talk about Dez Bryant getting released.
Yeah, no, it was there was a lot of speculation going into this offseason about Dez Bryant's production since he signed a 5-year, $70 million contract extension with the Cowboys. He was drafted by the Cowboys, and that's the only team he's ever played for. He's a Texas guy. He played at Oklahoma State. So in his mind, I mean, he's Texas through and through, Cowboys all the way. The actual Dallas Cowboys had other thoughts, and from the reports and everything that I've read so far, it was kind of like a split decision. There was, coaches and certain personnel who were ready to move on from Dez because of his production, but also because of his attitude and the way that he, I guess, approaches the game. And from my understanding, it was that, Dez is obviously a very emotional type of player, very fiery guy, right? And, that can be a good thing in a sense because in football, I believe it is about emotion and passion, and you do need certain players on your team, some type of rah-rah guys and guys that can get other guys fired up because Coach Jason Garrett, the head coach Jason Garrett, he always preaches competition. And Dez Bryant is all about that. It doesn't matter if he's going up against a cornerback, a safety. I mean, he'll talk, trash to the quarterback. He even talks trash to the coaches. And I think that was one of the things that the coaches didn't necessarily appreciate was Dez came out and said, listen, there's no disrespect. It's just if I feel that the coaches aren't doing something correctly, just like with players, I'm going to try to correct them. And I feel that there were some coaches that, took that the wrong way. And so for, that reason, among others, I feel that's why Dez was released. In my opinion, I don't think Jerry Jones wanted to let him go. I think Jerry Jones and Dez Bryant have a very close relationship, kind of like a father-son type of relationship. I think it was more of Stephen Jones, the COO of the Dallas Cowboys, Jerry Jones' son, who basically was able to talk Jerry Jones into releasing Dez Bryant, saying, we need to move in a different direction. He was a good player for us, but he's not producing at the level that we would expect, when we're paying this guy $12 million a year. This isn't the first time that the Cowboys have let go a marquee player. They let Terrell Owens go back when he was still in his prime. They let DeMarcus Ware go. They've let Emmitt Smith go. So the Cowboys have let, superstar players, in a sense, go before they're necessarily ready to retire. So obviously I think Dez Bryant still has a lot left in the tank. And he did say that he hopes to see the Cowboys twice a year, which would mean that he is trying to land a new deal within the NFC East. And if that happens, oh my gosh, I don't know what I would do because, this guy is already motivated enough. But if he went to the Philadelphia Eagles, Washington Redskins, or New York Giants, that would be must-see television right there. So I personally, I think it was the wrong decision. I think they should have held on to him at least for one more year and then let him go. But obviously, hey, I'm not in that room, and I'm not a coach or a personnel guy. So I just get to share my 2 cents. Nick, do you have anything to add to this?
Yeah, I'm disagree with you a little bit. I thought one of the reasons that they released him was because of his diminishing skills a little bit. And I think he tries to play like a player that he isn't anymore. He tries to play like a $12 million player, and he's not. And he's not making the certain adjustments to stay at that 12 million player mark, to stay at what he's getting paid. And so I think the Cowboys, looking at $12 million, they were like, you know what? we might be able to draft a guy. We might be able to pick up a guy in free agency. We might be able to handle stuff here with the wide receivers in the offense because we have Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott and a lot of other receivers. And so I do believe that it was a smart decision. If he was still playing at the level that he played at, let's say 4 years ago, I think this would be a different decision. One good example of this, and this isn't bias, is Larry Fitzgerald. Got older, switched positions, is still one of the top receivers in the league. Dez switched positions last year, I believe, and still kind of did the same thing, and was dropping balls and all this stuff. And I think now one thing I do agree with is I think that fiery attitude of him maybe made it a little easier for the Cowboys to give up on him because he talks a lot of trash, like you said, even to the organization. So they were like, well, this guy, he's kind of annoying anyways, so let's get rid of him. Let's save $12 million. It'd be interesting to see where they use that money. But I thought it was a good decision by the Cowboys. And the 2 times a year thing does not necessarily mean he's going to go to the NFC East. He could play the Cowboys in the playoffs too. So
true.
Obviously, he wants to say that because that would be very entertaining. I would love for him to join forces with, say, Josh Norman after they've gone at it a couple times. I think it'd be interesting to see Odell and Dez Bryant on the same field. Right?
Oh, boy.
I know you wouldn't like that. He also could join the Super Bowl champ. So there's a lot of storylines there that can work out in the NFL's favor and Dez Bryant's favor. And I do think he'll have a chip on his shoulder next year, and he will play a little bit better than he has the last couple of years.
For sure.
So I thought the Cowboys made a solid decision. If the contract was a little lower, I think they kind of save it and they go, you know what, he's a guy that we've had for a while. He's one of those Cowboys. But I mean, I think it's evident of them releasing Tony Romo last year, right, in a way, that this stuff was going to start to happen. So,
yeah, and just the last thing I want to say really quickly, there was a lot of reports, and obviously when the media reports something, they are hearing it more or less from another source, like an inside source, someone within the organization. So, you hear reports and you hear rumors all the time. Are they true? Are they not true? Who really knows? I had heard multiple reports from multiple different reporters that the Cowboys were going to ask Dez Bryant to take a pay cut before they actually were going to decide to keep him or release him. And then whether Dez Bryant said yes or no to the pay cut would essentially, say whether he was going to stay or not. The Cowboys never actually asked Dez Bryant to even take a pay cut. And then the day after when he was being interviewed, he said, I would have taken a pay cut if they would have offered me one, but they never offered me one in the first place. So that seems really interesting. Now who knows? Dez Bryant could just be saying that, right? Just to kind of look like the better person. Mm-hmm. Who knows if he would have actually really taken a pay cut? But it is interesting that, it's not, listen, yes, Dez Bryant, I think his skills have diminished and he's not the elite number 1 receiver that he used to be. But I think he can still make plays for your team. He's still a good jump ball guy, a red zone guy. And I think you need that passion and somewhat leadership on your team. So I'm surprised that they didn't offer, even if they lowballed him, the fact that they didn't, offer him any type of reduction, I think shows, how they really felt about him in the end.
Yeah, maybe something inside the organization, like you mentioned, possibly Stephen Jones kind of overriding his dad and just saying, hey, this guy needs to go. We don't even need to negotiate with him. All that stuff. I don't necessarily like that either, that they didn't even give him the option, because at least the Cardinals did give Tyrann Mathieu the option, and he said no.
Right.
So it made it a lot easier to release him. So 2 fiery guys, 2 guys that like to talk a lot anyway, so similar situation there. But yeah, so Dez Bryant's not on the Cowboys, hasn't signed yet with anybody. And I'll tell you this, we're going to get into our mock draft right now, and I have a certain team not picking a wide receiver because I believe they will sign Dez Bryant. So I'll mention that a little bit later. But Jared, you ready to go?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So I will start this off. Jared, well, actually, we'll kind of both start this off. We're going to list real quick our top 5. And then we are going to explain why we did it in that situation. We're not going to go one by one. We're going to kind of go through a whole thing. But so here, I'll go first. Here are my top 5. And by the way, I have the way I did my draft, and I think the way you probably do your draft too, is I don't have any trades necessarily happening.
No,
I will mention teams that I believe might trade back or trade up, but I'm gonna do the draft like it's set right now because it's too hard to predict, and then your draft gets all messed up and there's no point. So number 1, I got the Browns drafting Sam Darnold. Number 2, Giants drafting Josh Rosen. Number 3, Jets drafting Baker Mayfield. Number 4, Browns drafting running back Saquon Barkley. And number 5, Broncos selecting edge rusher Bradley Chubb.
Okay. All right. Ours are somewhat similar.
Okay.
Actually, more or less very similar. So, number 1 overall, Cleveland Browns. I believe they do need to take a quarterback. Even though they did sign Tyrod Taylor, I believe he's more of a bridge player. So I agree. I think Sam Darnold is the overall best quarterback in this draft, even though there's a lot of debate with Josh Allen as who is the 1 and 2. I'm going with Sam Darnold for the Browns, and he can sit behind Tyrod Taylor for a year and learn. So Sam Darnold to the Browns at number 1. Number 2, the Giants. I believe this is really where the draft starts because the Giants can go in so many different directions.
True.
They still have Eli Manning. He maybe has 1 or 2 years left. So if the Giants, think that they can win with Eli, maybe they go in a different direction. They can go running back Saquon Barkley. They can go Chubb. They can draft a quarterback. I believe they do draft a quarterback. I think this is the draft to find a franchise quarterback if you're really looking for one. And I believe that they take Josh Allen.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
okay.
I think that Josh Allen, even though I believe Josh Rosen out of UCLA is the better guy to put on the field as of right now, I think Josh Allen's upside is greater. I think he has a stronger arm. Playing in New York, you never know. You could have some bad weather later on in the season. And I feel that, with his upside and being able to sit and learn under Eli Manning, I think he will take that spot at number 2.
Mm-hmm.
Number 3, I agree with you. I think the Jets take Baker Mayfield.
Ah.
Number 4, I also agree with you. I think the Browns take Saquon Barkley, pair Sam Darnold with Saquon Barkley. Number 5, I think the Denver Broncos go quarterback as well and take Josh Rosen.
Oh, okay, wow.
Yes.
You got 4 quarterbacks going in the top 5.
This is the year. If you want a franchise starting quarterback, this is the year to take one.
Yeah, no, I have 5 quarterbacks going in the entire first round too. So
okay.
It's I have a similar thing. But to explain some of my picks, I think it's easy to pick Sam Darnold number 1. Looks like the best quarterback. I think any of those reports coming out that they're going to pick Josh Allen or Baker Mayfield or anything like that, it's simply not true. I think they're just ways to get us more interested in the draft, which they do. But I think they're picking Sam Darnold. It'd be really dumb if they didn't pick them. Rosen, I think that New York kind of style will fit him. I think New York knows that, the Giants specifically. And I think they'll grab him from the Jets. I also think they don't want necessarily the Giant. They don't want him to get drafted by the Jets. I think that might actually be a reason to draft him. So I think they'll take him number 2. Rosen is, in my opinion, the second best quarterback in this draft. And that might be a little bit biased because I am a UCLA fan. But watching him every single game, you do get to see a lot more of his skills. So I do think the Giants are making the right pick in number 2. Number 3. The Jets, I said Mayfield. I think I'd agree with you. Although I didn't think you would actually pick Mayfield to be the third quarterback pick. I thought you'd pick Rosen, but nonetheless. I think Jets, once they see 2 quarterbacks picked, they're going to have to pick one.
Right.
I think they for example, I actually think if the quarterback is not picked, let's say Barkley goes number 2, the Giants, I believe the Jets could trade back possibly as well. I didn't necessarily have this actually written down on my sheet right here, but I'm just thinking about it right now. I think if the Giants were to pick somebody else, or the Browns for all that, they trade up, or they trade down. I do think the Jets not necessarily pick a quarterback if 2 quarterbacks aren't picked, but nonetheless, Barkley, I think that's an easy pick for the Browns. You got to pick him if he's still on the board, and then Chubb. Broncos, I think, are looking for that tandem with him and Von Miller on the edge. I think that'd be nasty.
That would be ridiculous.
But I also have the Broncos possibly trading back too, because I think once they see a couple quarterbacks picked, I think they might not necessarily they might be able to trade back and know that they're going to get a quarterback later, and they could get extra picks.
Right.
Because I don't think you'll see on my sheet I don't have quarterbacks for a little bit down in the draft coming up next. So, but I think if you keep the pick, you got to pick Chubb. It's the best player in the draft. So, that's my top.
Yeah, so I kind of described my first 2 picks, so I'm just going to jump to number 3 with the Jets and Baker Mayfield. And is he better than Josh Rosen? I'm not totally sure. But I do believe that, and both of these quarterbacks, Josh Rosen and Baker Mayfield, I feel that they both have the mental makeup to deal with the New York media, because obviously if you're a sports fan and you follow the New York media at all, you could be, Eli Manning, the 2-time Super Bowl winning champion, and you have one bad game and you're going to get annihilated in the papers and by every New York fan, right? So you have to have really thick skin. You have to be able to have a short memory. And you also have to be able to be a leader and stand up for yourself. And I feel that Baker Mayfield, he just fits that mold a little better than Josh Rosen does. And I feel that he would be able to, basically, I think he could start day one, even though the Jets who do the Jets have?
I think they still have McCown, do they?
McCown, yes, they do. McCown. So, but I mean, he's also another bridge guy.
Yeah.
He's not going to be their future quarterback.
Exactly.
So I think Baker Mayfield to the Jets, he would definitely have an opportunity to start day one. The Browns, picking once again at number 4, it seems like every year the Browns have at least one pick in the top 5. It's pretty ridiculous. And I think they go Saquon Barkley. A lot of people can argue that he is the number 1 overall rated player in the draft talent-wise, and it's tough to argue because he does everything from the running back position, not only obviously being able to carry the ball up the middle and outside the tackles. He can block as well. He's a great blocker. He can catch the ball out of the backfield, and he's also just, he's not going to be a headache off the field. You know that you're going to get a solid football player who's going to come to work every day. He's not going to cause any distractions, and, I could see him as a potential gold medal jacket guy in the Hall of Fame when it's all said and done.
Dang,
I mean, that's a lot
Hall of Fame.
I know that's saying a lot, but trust me, man. I went back and watched a lot of his tape, and this guy can ball. They're saying that he's better than Ezekiel Elliott, potentially better than Le'Veon Bell. This guy has high expectations coming in, and I think he's going to be able to live up to that. So, if the Browns can get Sam Darnold and Barkley, I think they're on their way to becoming a at least average 8-8 team.
Yeah, I'm in one of those franchise fantasy leagues, a lot like you.
Yes.
And I have number 1 pick, so I'm going to get Saquon Barkley.
Okay, there you go.
So I'm excited about him, and
Right.
I think with this Browns offense kind of being rejuvenated, I think it's a good pick.
And they did sign Carlos Hyde, formerly of the 49ers.
Exactly.
So it's not like they have to, feed Saquon Barkley 30 times a game. They can ease him into the season and let his body adjust to an NFL season.
And exactly why I picked Darnold by the Browns, even though they have Tyrod Taylor, I think Carlos Hyde is not necessarily, he's a bridge running back as well.
Right.
I think you get Saquon Barkley, he's better than Carlos Hyde.
Yes.
Barring any injury or anything like that. So that's why we both have a quarterback and a running back getting picked, even though they have a quarterback and running back on the team.
Yes. And then at number 5, I have the Denver Broncos and John Elway taking Josh Rosen.
Yes.
And once again, listen, they did sign Case Keenum, and he had a phenomenal year for the Vikings last year, made himself a lot of money this year. And I think the great thing about this pick is, once again, Josh Rosen can sit and learn behind Case Keenum and John Elway. They don't have to throw him right into the fire. The Broncos still have a really, really good defense. And, they still have receivers. They have Emmanuel Sanders, Demaryius Thomas. I think they need to solidify their running back situation. They just released C.J. Anderson, I believe yesterday or the day before. And they need to work on their offensive line. But I think the great thing is, like I said, Josh Rosen can sit, learn for at least half the season. Who knows? Maybe Case Keenum doesn't play well, but I don't think you have to rush Josh Rosen into the starting lineup. And I think that right there is a luxury for a team to not have to do that right away.
Yeah, no, the first 5 should be interesting, and they kind of will format the rest of the draft for like a lot of years, but I think just because so many quarterbacks can be picked, you have 4.
Hey, that just means that there's so many other talented players.
Exactly.
That would normally be picked in the top 5 that are now getting pushed down.
No, exactly. And if one of these quarterbacks doesn't pan out, it's kind of a waste of a pick anyway. So I feel like defensive players and stuff like that don't tend to not pan out as much. All right, so Jerry, why don't you give 6 through 10, just list them, and then we'll go at it in a second.
Yeah, so 6 through 10, the Colts, I have them taking Quentin Nelson, the guard from Notre Dame. A lot of people say that he is the safest pick in the draft. Number 7, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking Derwin James from Florida State, so he gets to stay in Florida. Number 8, I have the Chicago Bears taking Denzel Ward, the cornerback from Ohio State. Number 9, I have the San Francisco 49ers taking Tremaine Edmonds, the inside linebacker from Virginia Tech. And number 10, the Oakland Raiders, I have back-to-back linebackers going as the Raiders select Raekwon Smith, the outside linebacker from Georgia.
Okay, so this is a little different. We have some similar players, some not. At number 6 for the Colts, I actually have Raekwon Smith going to the Colts.
Really?
Yeah, although I did think about the Nelson pick, I did think about the offensive line, I think Raekwon Smith is a game changer. I think he's one of those, not sleepers, but he's going to be one of those really good players that comes out of this draft that a lot of teams are not necessarily thinking of. I think you saw that in the national championship game, too, how well he played. He's a beast. Number 7, I got the Bucs. I got them picking a DB. I got them picking Minkah Fitzpatrick.
Okay.
I think Minkah Fitzpatrick is the best DB in this draft. I think his stock has only gone down because his name has been up there a lot. I still think he's a good player, so I think it would be a mistake if the Bucs didn't pick Fitzpatrick. Number 8, I got the Bears picking Quentin Nelson, improving their already solid offensive line. This could be their offensive line could be the Dallas Cowboys' offensive line.
One little side note: the Chicago Bears offensive line coach was Quentin Nelson's coach at Notre Dame.
Oh wow! See, I didn't even know that.
So that's a little tie-in right there.
Yeah, that's nice. So it even validates the pick even more. Number 9, this is one of my picks where the 49ers, I believe they might trade back because I think they have a talented or a more talented team than their number 9 pick. But I think if they do a pick here, I think they pick edge rusher Harold Landry from Boston College.
Really?
I think they want to solidify. They already have a good defensive line, but they want to make it even better. You solidify that kind of position on the field. So I think if they pick, but I strongly believe they're actually going to trade this pick. So Landry could also be drafted later. It's one of the reasons I have him so high. And number 10, I got the Raiders drafting Derwin James, safety that you mentioned. I believe that they need some DB help. And so I think Derwin James, being one of the better DBs in the draft, I think they pick him right there. So
okay.
I'll explain my picks a little bit, although I kind of already did. Raekwon Smith, like I mentioned, he's a beast. Colts need help on defense and offensive line, but I think they want to pick you want to pick the best player out there. Like I mentioned, DB, Fitzpatrick, Bucs need a guy. I think Fitzpatrick's the best. Quentin Nelson, I think we already explained that a little bit, why I picked that. 49ers, I believe, are going to trade. And Derwin James, I kind of already explained my picks, so I don't know why I'm going over it again. But Derwin James, I think they need a DB. So, Jared, I'll let you explain your picks.
Yeah, number 6, Quentin Nelson. Listen, Andrew Luck is still the franchise quarterback for the Colts, even though he's been injured and unfortunately hasn't been able to get on the field basically all of last year or the year before. But I think the Colts are so depleted at so many positions, and they're just an awful team overall, in my opinion. I think they need so much help. I think you start from the inside out unless you're trying to pick a quarterback. In my opinion, I'm hoping that Andrew Luck will be healthy enough to play this year. And I think you need to get him protection. You need to get him help because since he's come into the league, I believe he's like top 3 in most sacks by a quarterback. So obviously, if the Colts want to win, they need to start with anchoring that front. Quentin Nelson, to me, is one of the safest picks in the draft. Number 7, I have the Bucs taking Derwin James. The Bucs signed T.J. Ward, formerly of the Denver Broncos, last year to kind of be that strong safety type guy. T.J. Ward is, in my opinion, fallen off in his abilities, and he's not the player he used to be. Derwin James is just like Minkah Fitzpatrick of Alabama. Derwin James is one of the do-it-all safety/corner guys. He can play free safety. He can come up and play strong safety in the box, almost like a linebacker. He can cover your slot receivers. He can cover your tight ends. And if you really need to, if you're really in a pinch, he can even go out and play some corner. This guy does it all. He's like a mini Cam Chancellor in a sense, but better in my opinion because he has better cover skills. So I think this guy is there's not many athletes that come around like Derwin James, and I think for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they need to solidify that secondary and get a lot better there. Number 8, I have the Chicago Bears taking Denzel Ward, the cornerback from Ohio State. They did keep Kyle Fuller. They matched his contract. Kyle Fuller signed a offer sheet with the Green Bay Packers, and the Chicago Bears think so highly of him that they matched that offer sheet. Mm-hmm. So Kyle Fuller will be staying with the Bears, but they also need help on the other side. And I think this is where Denzel Ward comes in. I think he's maybe not the biggest cornerback in the draft, but I think he's the best pure cover corner. You can literally put him on an island, and he can recover any receiver. And for the most part, you're going to know that he's going to lock that position down. So the Bears are getting a lot better offensively, and I think they're going to be a better offensive team. So in the draft, I think they need to focus more on defense. Number 9, I think the San Francisco 49ers take Jermaine Edmonds, the inside linebacker from Virginia Tech. And the reason why I'm having them pick him is because Reuben Foster, who was the 49ers first round pick last year.
Yes, I forgot about
He's in a lot of legal trouble right now, facing 3 different felony charges, and it don't look good for him. It doesn't look like he's getting on the field anytime soon. There's reports that that they're going to meet with him this week and discuss his future. But as of right now, I don't think you can bet that he's going to be on the field for the 49ers. So as an insurance policy, and this is a pretty damn good one in Tremaine Edmunds, I think they picked him and basically have him get in there as a replacement. That's a pretty good replacement to have. Number 10, I think the Raiders, and I've seen a lot of mock drafts, and Roquan Smith of Georgia has basically been the one and only player going to the Raiders. Even though Smith is a smaller linebacker, he's not a big, huge bruiser like a Ray Lewis or anyone like that. He's a sideline-to-sideline guy. He can cover your running backs, your tight ends, and he can literally, like I said, sideline to sideline. He's one of the fastest linebackers in the draft. And we know with the Raiders, they love their fast guys.
Yeah, no, it's a solid picks you explained there. The thing with Reuben Foster, because we have about 3 minutes left in the segment, so we can discuss this. I think what we take away, because obviously it's domestic violence, we've seen this a lot, it's not okay. I heard 11 years potentially in prison for what he did, so this guy obviously did some wrong. But I think this finally tells teams and fans that maybe you don't necessarily want to risk a pick on some of these guys. Because if they have a past, or if they're already... Because I don't think Reuben Foster coming out of the draft was the guy they were worried about domestic violence. I think it was marijuana, right? There was drugs in his system or something like that when he got out of the combine. But it just shows you that some of these guys that are willing to kind of go against the rules when they're heading into the NFL might end up not being the best guys in the end. I think this solidifies why a lot of teams and a lot of guys drop in the draft. Because look at Reuben Foster 1 year later, really on draft week, he's potentially not going to play in the NFL anymore. I mean, if he goes to prison, he's not playing anymore. So I think you make a good point about them potentially picking a linebacker. I kind of forgot about the Reuben Foster incident, so I didn't think about that as much. But nonetheless, I think it does solidify why teams are sketchy on drafting some of these guys. Your take on that a little bit.
Yeah, no, it is. And the interesting thing is, listen, Reuben Foster came from Alabama.
Yeah.
Nick Saban's coaching
tree. Yeah,
it's
not an Alabama guy kind of thing to do.
No, it's not. I mean, you wouldn't think that a Nick Saban guy would, I guess, get in this type of trouble. And it seems like when he was with Alabama, he kept his nose very clean, or at least we think he did. And, it seems like he got to the NFL, got that paycheck and obviously did some wrong things. So, it's tough for the 49ers for Reuben Foster. What are you thinking, man? Like, you have the world in your hands. Your number 1 draft pick, you get to play in the NFL, which is probably your dream, and you've more likely screwed that by now having to go to jail because of stupid decisions that you made. So, it's an unfortunate incident, and that's where, that's why this draft process for teams is so long and lengthy, because there's such a long vetting process. There's the combine workouts, there's pro days where each individual college gets to showcase their players. You have team interviews where teams get to go and sit down one-on-one with these players and find out more about them. So it's a long process. And listen, you think you know everything about a player, and then you draft them and give them a lot of money, and you never know. Things can change. So unfortunately, I feel that's the situation that's happened now. The 49ers, like I said, the reason why I think they pick a linebacker is to have that insurance policy in case Reuben Foster will not be there. Yeah,
it's interesting. Like I mentioned, Reuben Foster did not come out of college with the domestic violence thing on his record. This is all new to really anybody that's following them. So, nonetheless, though, we have to move on. Coming up next, we will go through picks 11 through 25 in the draft. We will move on to the the middle rounds of the NFL draft on the other side of this quick break.
With the first pick in the 2017 NFL Draft, the Cleveland Browns select Myles Garrett, defensive end, Texas A&M. With the second pick in the 2017 NFL Draft, the Chicago Bears select Mitchell Trubisky, quarterback, North Carolina.
Cover 2 podcast back live on OC Rock Radio, continuing our Cover 2 mock draft edition of the show today. That I am very, very excited, and I know that Nick is excited as well. In the first segment, we gave you picks 1 through 10, I believe. Was it 1 through 10?
Yeah, 1 through 10.
We did 1 through 10, and so now we are going to continue on with the Miami Dolphins at number 11, and I'm going to let Nick take it away with his next 5 picks.
Yes. So my next 5 picks, 11 through 15. Dolphins selecting Josh Allen, quarterback from Wyoming.
Really?
I got the Dolphins picking a quarterback.
Wow.
Because I did not have the Broncos picking him like you did, but I need to not explain my picks. So I know I had made the rules and I'm not even following them.
It's okay.
Number 12, Bills select Lamar Jackson, quarterback from Louisville.
Oh.
Number 13, Redskins select Vita Vea, defensive tackle from Washington. Number 14, the Packers select Denzel Ward from, I believe, Ohio State. And number 15, my Cardinals selecting Calvin Ridley, wide receiver from Alabama. Jared?
Okay.
11 through 15.
Yes, 11, the Miami Dolphins. I have them taking Vita Vea.
Okay.
Dominican Sue's gone, so I have them taking him. Number 12, I have the Bills taking Mason Rudolph.
Ooh.
Quarterback, Oklahoma
Skipping
State.
over Lamar Jackson.
Yes. Number 13, the hated Washington Redskins, in my opinion. I have them taking cornerback Mike Hughes of Central Florida. Number 14, the Green Bay Packers. I have them taking Marcus Davenport, the defensive end from Texas San Antonio, smaller school. And number 15, I agree with my man over here. I have the Arizona Cardinals taking Calvin Ridley.
Yes.
So I will now go back to number 11 with the Dolphins. And like I mentioned, I think with the loss of Ndamukong Suh and that huge contract, there's a huge void in the middle of that Miami Dolphins defense, and I think Vita Vea is the best defensive tackle in the draft. Even though he's like 300-something pounds,
it doesn't matter.
He moves so quick. He moves, and I'm not sitting here saying he's Aaron Donald, but he moves that quick. I mean, he can punish you and be a run stuffer, but he has he's very elusive, and I think he can get 5 to 7 sacks in a season for a defensive tackle, which in my opinion is very, very good. Number 12, the Buffalo Bills, I think they do take Mason Rudolph over Lamar Jackson, and I think this is because Mason Rudolph, even though he did play in mostly a spread system at Oklahoma State, I think he has a better arm, and in Buffalo, you're going to have some bad weather games, and so I think he's a bigger, taller, stronger quarterback that I think can withstand more of those hits. And I think he can get the ball down the field in those bad weather situations. So I think that's why the Bills take him. Plus, he can also sit. They did sign A.J. McCarron. Who knows how well A.J. McCarron will be because he's never been a starting quarterback. But at least they have some type of bridge so they don't have to start Mason right away. At number 13, I had the Redskins taking Mike Hughes, the cornerback from Central Florida. The Redskins traded away Kendall Fuller, their slot cornerback, to the Kansas City Chiefs, and that was a part of the Alex Smith trade. Plus, they lost Bashad Breeland, their other cornerback. So their cornerback depth is a little depleted. Obviously, they still have
Josh Norman.
Yes, Josh Norman. I'm sorry, they still have Josh Norman, but they need someone else to replace him. Mike Hughes is a really, really solid player. Plus, he does a lot on special teams, punt and kick returner. So he's a very versatile player. Number 14, I have the Packers taking Marcus Davenport. The Packers need a lot of help up front. Their secondary is somewhat getting replenished, but I think one of the Packers' biggest issues in recent years is they haven't been able to get pressure on the quarterback, even though Clay Matthews is still there. He's getting up there in age, and I think that Marcus Davenport can come in and be one of those rotational players for them. And number 15, Calvin Ridley. I think this is a fantastic pick for the Cardinals. There's not necessarily a quarterback there that they want to take, so they settle for their next biggest need, in my opinion, one of their biggest needs. And I think Calvin Ridley can learn from Larry Fitzgerald, have a year to play with him, and then take over as their number one receiver once Larry Fitzgerald retires. So I don't think there's a better receiver to learn from, other than Jerry Rice, than Larry Fitzgerald. So I think that's a fantastic pick for the Cardinals and Calvin Ridley.
Yes, so I'll start at number 11. Dolphins, I have obviously picking Josh Allen. I think that their quarterback situation has been in limbo the last couple of years with Mike Tannehill. Obviously, the debacle with Jay Cutler last year, and Matt Moore is not anything in the future for the Dolphins. So I think they pick quarterback. Like I mentioned, I do not have Allen in the top 5 like Jared does, so I'm going to have him dropping to the team that needs the quarterback, the next team that needs quarterback. So Josh Allen to the Dolphins. Number 12, I have Lamar Jackson to the Bills. I think the Bills are used to that kind of system with a running quarterback, and I believe Lamar Jackson is underrated in this draft. I believe he will do better than people think. And I think the Bills, they need a quarterback, although Mason Rudolph is a solid pick. I'm going to go Lamar Jackson. I think he's better. I think he has a higher upside than Rudolph or any of the quarterbacks that we have mentioned. Number 13, Redskins, Vita Vea. Their defense is it's always been kind of average the last couple of years. I think, like you mentioned, I'm very high on Vita Vea too. You compare him to Aaron Donald, I'm not necessarily ready to do that yet, but I do think he's a game changer on defense. He's a very good player, and I think you add a guy that can get to the quarterback for the Redskins. I think that's why they pick Vita Vea. Number 14, Denzel Ward. Now this is a pick where they picked Denzel Ward. They need a cornerback, but this is also where I thought they might pick a wide receiver, but I didn't say that because I believe Dez Bryant will actually end up with the Packers. I think Dez Bryant, we'll be talking about earlier, will end up with the Packers. They do not have Jordy Nelson anymore. There is a spot open, and imagine Aaron Rodgers throwing to Dez Bryant. I think that would be a connection that would make Dez Bryant even better than I expect him to be next year. Let's talk about the revenge factor. Imagine having Aaron Rodgers beat the Cowboys with Dez Bryant. It'd be interesting. Plus, it'd be a historic game in that case. But I'm going ahead of myself. They picked Denzel Ward because they need DB help. But I did not have them picking wide receiver because I believe they'll sign Dez Bryant. Number 15, Cardinals. You said a lot that makes sense about Calvin Ridley, my pick. I also believe the Cardinals might actually trade back in this draft, knowing that these quarterbacks have already kind of all been picked, so there's no reason to necessarily stay at the 15 spot. You can get extra picks in the draft. Steve Keim, the GM, has done that a lot. But I believe if they keep the pick, they will pick Calvin Ridley. The Cardinals are changing up their offense a little bit with Mike McCoy. And no more and Bruce Arians. These little receivers that they drafted the last couple of years didn't necessarily work. So I think they get a bigger dude in Calvin Ridley to kind of hold the reins for Larry Fitzgerald once Larry Fitzgerald finally retires. All right, so I'll just transition right into, Jared, you pick 16 through 20. Yeah.
16 through 20. I have the Baltimore Ravens taking Harold Landry, the edge rusher. I believe that this is another pick. I feel like we have a lot of picks where guys can sit and learn from the veteran players that are already on their team, and I think this is another case of that where Harold Landry gets to go and learn from Terrell Suggs and be that that next edge rusher whenever Terrell Suggs decides to leave. Number 17, I have the San Diego Chargers taking Leighton Vander Esch, and I hope I pronounced that right. I'm sorry if I didn't. I think that the Chargers wanted a safety, but because there aren't any left, they go with the next best thing in linebacker. Number 18, the Seattle Seahawks take Josh Jackson, the long, lengthy cornerback from Iowa. Number 19, the Dallas Cowboys take DJ Moore, receiver from Maryland, speedster. And number 20, the Detroit Lions take Will Hernandez, the quote-unquote, what I've heard, nasty guard out of Texas El Paso.
Okay, so number 16, I have the Ravens selecting Courtland Sutton, wide receiver from, I believe, SMU. I think they need a receiver. They haven't had one of those main guys in Baltimore for a while, so I think they can draft that. I think Courtland Sutton is underrated. Number 17, I got Chargers picking Leighton Vander Esch as well. Kind of similar reason Jared did, because I think they want to draft other players, but they need, but those guys are going to get picked, so they settle for the linebacker. Number 18, I also have Josh Jackson going to the Seattle Seahawks. I think they need that corner since they lost Richard Sherman. Number 19, I actually have the Cowboys drafting Maurice Hurst from Michigan, defensive tackle. So it's the second straight defensive lineman from Michigan that the Cowboys will draft. I remember you mentioned something about that they need to replenish their defensive line a little bit this next year. So that was what kind of went into that decision a little bit. And number 20, Lions, I have them drafting Marcus Davenport, defensive end. I think this is one of the premier defensive line guys in this draft, and I think the Lions need some defensive line help. So I think he goes at number 20.
Yep. So I guess we'll go back.
And, talk about I kind of explained mine, so you can just kind of explain yours.
Yeah. So just quickly, like I already mentioned about Harold Landry, basically replacing Terrell Suggs once he's done. Terrell Suggs is definitely up there and long in the tooth, and he's probably only got a couple years left, if that. The Chargers taking Leighton Vander Esch. I think the Chargers defense is getting stacked. I mean, you have Joey Bosa. I think you have some good secondary guys. You have, oh my gosh, why am I blanking on the secondary names?
Were you talking about the Chargers?
The Chargers corners, yes.
I'm blanking on them too.
I'm going to find out in a minute. I'll come back to it.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think their weak spot is at linebacker. I don't really think they have one, ultra talented starting linebacker. I think they have a lot of depth guys, but I don't think they have a main starter that they can rely on. Agreed. So I think that's where Landon Vander Esch comes in, and he's very versatile. I believe you paid him the 3-4 and a 4-3 at Boise State, so he can do a little bit of both. The Seahawks at 18 taking Josh Jackson. He's a long and lengthy corner, like I mentioned, and obviously with Seattle releasing Richard Sherman, they need to replace him because they don't really have that many corners on their team right now. That whole Legion of Boom is gone, basically, except for Cam Chancellor. And we're not even sure that he's going to play this year because of that horrific neck injury. 19, I have the Cowboys taking DJ Moore. Obviously losing Dez Bryant, but I think the Cowboys have always wanted more speed on the field at receiver. They have Terrence Williams, who right now is probably their fastest receiver, but still, I don't think he has the speed that they're looking for. So I think DJ Moore can come in and stretch the defense and be that deep guy. And at number 20, the Lions take Will Hernandez. Matthew Stafford is year to year always getting sacked or leads the league in most sacks by a quarterback. So I think the Lions, even though they could use defensive end help like you mentioned, I think they need to solidify that offensive line and help Matthew Stafford since he is their franchise guy and they gave him all that money.
Yeah, real quick, I want to mention one thing with the Chargers. Like we both kind of mentioned, with guys that they kind of want getting picked before them, I also think they might trade back in the draft as well. So, because I believe you could also get Leighton Vander Esch later in this draft because I don't have a lot of necessarily linebackers going in this next couple picks. So I think they could afford to trade back since they're going to lose out on some players in the first round. All right, Jared, give your 21 through 25.
21 through 25. So the Bengals are up at number 21. I have them taking Mike McGlinchey, I believe, the tackle from Notre Dame.
Yes.
The Bengals are another team that gives up a lot of sacks, and Andy Dalton has been on his back more than he's been on standing up. So I think they need to shore up that offensive line. They did trade for Corey Glenn from the Bills, a tackle from the Bills in the offseason, so they shored up one tackle spot, but I think they need to still add to that offensive line, and if they think that Andy Dalton's still their guy, they need to protect him up front. The Bills coming in at number 22 with their second first round pick, and I have them taking Maurice Hurst, the defensive tackle. I think the Bills they need more help as what is his name? I'm just blanking on names today.
Taco Charlton?
Wait, no. No, he's a guy that a former defensive tackle for the Bills who left and was with the Jaguars.
Darius.
Yes, yeah. Darius. Yes, Darius, and he's now with the Jaguars. He was probably the Bills' best defensive tackle, who's now gone, so they need to replace him. We are at number 23 with the New England Patriots coming in. I think they take Colton Miller, the tackle from UCLA. They lost 2 tackles in the offseason, and so I think Bill Belichick needs to still protect Tom Brady. If Tom Brady wants to stay upright.
That'd be smart.
Yeah, right. Number 24, I have the Carolina Panthers taking Justin Reed, the safety from Stanford. And number 25, I have the Tennessee Titans taking Billy Price, the center from Ohio State.
Interesting. Okay, so 21, I have Will Hernandez, the guard, that you mentioned going to the Lions. Everything you kind of talked about with him will apply to this. 22, I got Colton Miller going to the Bills. Just one pick prior to that. Always nice to add offensive line. 23, Jair Alexander, cornerback to possibly replace Malcolm Butler going to the Patriots. 24, Panthers, James Washington, wide receiver from Oklahoma State. And 25, Tremaine Edwards, linebacker, going to the Titans. So I'll explain a little bit of mine. Like I mentioned, Will Hernandez, he's a beast. The linemen are not getting necessarily picked in my draft very high, so he, in my opinion, is actually the second best lineman in this draft. So he goes second in the draft to the Bengals. 22, Bills, Colton Miller, always at offensive line, and with a, you don't necessarily know what the quarterback situation is going to be there. Even if they draft Lamar Jackson, they might sign other guys. Like you mentioned, I believe they have A.J. McCarron. Is that who you mentioned was with the Bills?
The Bills,
or?
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you want to have some offensive, a good offensive line to protect those guys. Patriots, although they could trade either of their first-round picks, because they have two. If they keep the pick, I think they draft a corner. And who better than Jair Alexander, since he's the best corner on the board. Panthers drafting James Washington. I think you want as much help as you possibly can with Cam Newton. They've had some sketchy receivers the last couple of years. Although Curtis Samuel played well for them last year at receiver, I think they add even more depth along with Christian McCaffrey coming out of the backfield. I think they can create something there in Carolina. And Titans need some linebacker help, so I have them drafting Tremaine Edwards, who you had going a lot higher. Just the way my draft ended up going, I think Tremaine Edwards drops to the Tennessee Titans.
So going back to number 21 and McGinley, and that is Team Bengals. I believe I kind of already spoke on this one a little bit. The fact that the Bengals need tackle help. They need to keep Andy Dalton upright, even though I still don't think that's going to be enough. I think it's more... This team really relies too much on Andy Dalton. I think Andy Dalton has proved through his play that he's not the guy for them, but the Bengals are in a bad spot to basically pick a quarterback because all the top quarterbacks are gone unless they want to trade up, which I don't think they're going to do. I think they're going to stay pat at number 21. So they take the next best thing in the offensive tackle. At 22, Maurice Hurst, the defensive tackle, like I mentioned, I think the Bills need to shore up that front. Last year, they picked White, the cornerback from LSU, with their number 1 overall pick on defense, and I think they go back-to-back defensive picks in the first round again. The Patriots, number 23, taking that tackle Colton Miller. Like I mentioned, they lost 2 tackles in the offseason, the free agency, and so they need to shore that up for Tom Brady. Justin Reed with the Panthers. The Panthers lost Trey Boston, their safety in free agency, and so Justin Reed, I think, is a center field type of guy that can come in and start right away. And 25, Billy Price from Ohio State, the center from Ohio State. I think he's the best center in this draft. Unfortunately, during the NFL scouting combine, I think when he was bench pressing, he did something to his shoulder. I don't know if it was a strain or a tear, and they said he's going to be out for a few months. He should be good to go for the regular season, and hopefully he is, but I think that he would be a good fit there, trying to keep Marcus Mariota upright at number 25.
Yeah, interesting. So, real quick, for these first 25 picks, do you have any teams that you believe will trade back or anything? Because I'm mentioning kind of as I go, but I've seen that you haven't mentioned any of that kind of stuff.
I can see there's a few. The Giants, number 2.
Okay.
Because there's so many options for them. Like I said, they can pick go in 3 or 4 different positions, to choose from. Or if one of the other quarterback needy teams like the Bills or the Broncos or someone, if they want to move up, or the Dolphins, if they feel that they're not going to get their guy, I could see them trading back. I can see the Broncos trading back at number 5 as well. The same scenario, if there's a team that wants to jump ahead, I can see the Broncos collecting extra picks. That really is it as far as teams that I think will really move back. I think just about every other team, I think, is going to stand pat where they are, and basically choose, at the position that they already have.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting. I have a lot more trades, but that just
right. I think I'm playing a little more conservative.
Yeah. So I want to mention one thing too. I made a mistake, and I was wondering when I saw this name why I said this. So Titans, I actually have selecting Arden Key, edge rusher from LSU. The way I did it, I accidentally wrote Tremaine Edwards, and I wanted to switch him, but I didn't actually switch him. I just wrote stupid hashtags. But nonetheless, that's not important. They actually could draft Tremaine Edwards because they need an inside linebacker. But I do believe the better pick would be Arden Key. I think Arden Key is another sleeper in this draft. We'll talk about sleepers a little later. But so I believe the Titans select Arden Key, not Tremaine Edwards, to keep that edge rusher.
Right, and just one thing, I was blinking on the San Diego Chargers cornerbacks. Yes. Jason Verrett and Casey Hayward, the two All-Pro, Pro Bowl cornerbacks for them. I know, I can't believe Casey Hayward, I have him on my fantasy team, so I can't believe I forgot him. Jason Verrett has been injured throughout his career, but coming out of TCU, he's a really, really strong cornerback. So, yeah, if the Chargers can get another linebacker there, I think that defense is going to be really, really solid.
Yeah, their defense is pretty good. I think that's why we have them selecting defensive guys, too, to keep going. All right, we're going to come back with Do You Care? We're going to step away from football a little bit. I know we have one question to one or the other of us, but it's pretty much going to be a little break from the NFL here. So coming up next, Do You Care?
To the boards, to the corner. Schmidt will try and hold it there, and that's going to do it. As the horn sounds, and the Knights have ousted the Kings, and their historic first ever playoff series victory is a clean sweep.
LeBron James loses a game one of the first round for the first time, despite a triple-double as the Indiana Pacers. An outstanding performance at both ends of the floor.
And Lobatone setting up inside. The barrel of the bat flew all the way to the screen, and look at this! See you later on a broken bat. The bat hit the screen behind the bat boy, and Bryce Harper hits it out of the yard.
I think Roy Hobbs just hit a home run.
Cover 2 podcast back from the break on OC Rock Radio. And Nick, do you know what it's time for?
I do know what it's time for, but Jared, what is it time for?
It's time for Do You Care?
Care.
I was trying to do that in Nick's voice.
Yeah, it's not as
really
easy as you guys think.
No, it was my first time
to get
doing
that excited over a segment.
I did pretty well.
Yeah, no, it's not bad. Yeah.
But it is Do You Care? And this segment we will mainly stick away from football. We will have one football question in there. Of course, we can't get away from it. But Nick, you get the first crack. So, do you care that Bryce Harper hit a broken bat home run?
No, but it was amazing to watch. He hit a broken bat home run in New York at Citi Field. It's his league-leading 8th home run. It's just going to the point me and Jared said that he's probably going to be MVP. He could hit 50 home runs, and he's going to get that $400 million contract in the offseason. Bryce Harper's doing something that it's amazing in baseball because he's been talking all about this big contract he wants. He deserves all this money. And he's proving it to us by hitting not only a home run with a broken bat, but a home run to a deep right center in Citi Field. And he hit it 406 feet. And I'm not talking about a normal broken bat. I'm talking about this bat shattering. All he had was the bottom of the handle in his hand. So, amazing from Bryce Harper. Just solidifying Jared and I's take on him earlier this season when we did the MLB predictions. That he's going to be amazing this year. Jared, do you care that Shohei Ohtani left last night's game against the Boston Red Sox with a blister?
I don't care. Obviously, if you have a blister on your pitching hand, that's going to affect your pitches.
Yes.
And more than likely one of the reasons why he had 2 very ineffective innings where he gave up 3 runs. So, I don't think it's a big deal because it's not a major injury. It'll just, take some time to heal, but it's not like he strained his shoulder or did anything that is, in my opinion, worthy of really talking about. So the way that he started, I think he deserves a little bit of a pass. And as long as this blister heals, I expect him to get back to the form that we've seen him in so far early on in the season. Nick, do you care, sticking with baseball, that Jose Bautista has signed with the Braves?
Yes, I do care. I've been wondering where this guy's going to go. I almost forgot about him a little bit. Jose Bautista has been kind of Mr. Canada the last couple of years with his heroics for the Toronto Blue Jays. Obviously, we all remember that big home run he hit where he threw the bat against Texas after that crazy series where they had a couple fights. Bautista took one on the chin from Rougned Odor. So very entertaining. I believe that was 2 years ago. Nonetheless, Bautista has been in that free agent limbo like a lot of players have. Took him a while to sign, I believe, because he kind of talked about a $30 million a year contract, even though he's in his late 30s. Kind of dumb thing to say last year. The Braves, interestingly enough, signed him to a minor league deal. I don't know if you mentioned that in the question, but they signed him to a minor league deal, but I believe he will eventually be up with Atlanta at some point. Atlanta, they might not be that bad this year. You're looking at some wild card teams. Atlanta, they got some interesting pieces on the team. Obviously, they still have Freddie Freeman, the young guys in like Dansby Swanson, and a guy named Ozzie Albies at second base who's really impressing me too. But adding Batista, nothing hurt there for a team that's sort of in rebuild, but also could possibly make the playoffs. So, nonetheless, we will move on. Jared, do you care that Kawhi Leonard is out for the playoffs?
I do care, and not because I care about the Spurs, but because Kawhi Leonard, in my opinion, is probably the third best player in the league behind LeBron James and Kevin Durant when healthy. And obviously this entire season has basically been lost. I believe he's only played in like 9 or 10 regular season games. And there's been a lot of speculation that, he's not faking the injury, but that, he should be playing through the injury. And I guess in his opinion, he's saying, I'm not going to go out there and risk my health for this team when I am looking to either get out of this contract and sign a max deal next year. So whether that's with the Spurs or not, that will remain to be seen. It doesn't seem like right now that will be. It seems like that relationship is somewhat broken. But it's tough to see because, like I said, he is one of the best players in the league, one of the faces of the NBA, and you want to see him out there on the court. Obviously, right now, the Warriors are having an easy time with the Spurs without Kawhi. I think it would be a little different story if he was able to play. So hopefully he can get completely healthy, and who knows, he's going to have a lot of suitors going after him next season if he's not still with the Spurs. Nick, do you care that the Cavaliers got blown out at home by the Pacers in Game 1?
Yes, I care about this a lot because, as many of my friends know, I don't like to see the same thing over again in the NBA Finals, and that is exactly what we've seen the last couple of years with the Golden State Warriors and, of course, the Cleveland Cavs led by LeBron James. So to see LeBron James, to be honest and frank, get his ass kicked in the first game of this series against Indiana, it was pretty joyful for me. And I went on Twitter and I put those little laughing emojis. I think the score was 33-12 after the first quarter. Although they made a furious effort, like a lot of people thought they would, they end up still getting blown out. But I think this just shows that this Cavs team is, well, they've been sketchy all year, but this may be Toronto's year, like I mentioned last week when we predicted the NBA playoffs. And I think Toronto's getting to the finals, and I think this is just going to solidify my point there. But always nice to see the big guys kind of get knocked down. So go Indiana. I'm just going to be that frank with it. Jared, do you care that Kobe has a new show on ESPN?
I do care, and I think it's really, really cool. I know, Nick, you've been talking for a while that you wish Kobe was on, is it Inside the NBA?
Inside the NBA.
Right.
Shaq.
Obviously, Kobe's next career, he's always wanted to get into film, and that's what his main focus is right now. And so basically what he's doing is he has a show called Detail, where he is basically sitting down and giving his diagnosis of some of these playoff games that are happening right now. And I think it's obviously really cool and interesting because of how great of a player he was. I mean, for our generation, he's the Michael Jordan of our generation,
exactly,
right? So it'd be like if Michael Jordan was sitting down and giving his insight on what he thinks, teams should be doing and breaking down game film. So I think it's really, really cool, really interesting. I think a lot of people are going to want to sit and listen to it and, be able to see from Kobe's brain and his perspective what he sees. So I haven't seen it yet, but it's on my list of things to do. Probably tonight, actually, I'll check that out. But yeah, it seems like really cool, and I'm sure it's going to be a hit for Kobe. Nick, do you care, last question for you, that the LA Kings got swept by the Vegas Golden Knights?
Yes, I do care. Wow. Talk about disappointing. I really got into the Kings a little more this year and just hockey overall because I thought both our SoCal teams would do well this year. I thought the Kings would return to the playoffs for the first time since 2016. I thought they might have the team. They have an MVP candidate in Anze Kopitar, Defensive of the Year candidate in Drew Doughty, Goalie of the Year candidate in Jonathan Quick.
Wow.
And they got swept by Vegas. They lost every game by one, only scored 4 goals the entire playoffs in these 4 games. Kind of ridiculous. But nonetheless, Vegas really impressed me, though. The Vegas Golden Knights, expansion team, doing things that no expansion team has even been close to doing. They get out of the first round. Their first team, obviously, to sweep in the first round. And they impressed me because their defense looks better than I originally thought. A lot of people really talked about their offense, how fast their skaters are and all that stuff, and how good of a coach Gerard Gallant is at teaching the offense. Well, their defense shut down the Kings. And like I just mentioned, Kings got a lot of star players. They got Jeff Carter, Tanner Pearson, Tyler Foley. So I just think that this is, it's Vegas' time. Kings will be disappointed, but they'll come back with a vengeance next year, hopefully. And definitely disappointing by the Kings against the Vegas Golden Knights. All right, Jared, last question. Do you care that the NFL schedule is coming out Thursday?
Oh, do I? Yes, I care. This is really, really exciting. Obviously, I'm a huge football fan. There was a leaked report, and I'm pretty sure it's been confirmed, that the first regular season game has already been announced.
I don't know this.
It's typically whoever wins the Super Bowl usually gets to play in the first game of the regular season. So therefore, the Philadelphia Eagles will be hosting that game, and there's a lot of reports that are saying it will be against the Minnesota Vikings. There were some rumors that it was going to be the Cowboys because of that rivalry, but the Minnesota Vikings, with getting Kirk Cousins and with how close they got to the Super Bowl last year, they're a really good team. So that seems to be the Week 1, Game 1 matchup of the season. But it's always fun and entertaining to see. I like to try to go to at least one NFL game a year, even if it's not my Cowboys. So, just to see who's going to play who, what games are going to be on Monday Night Football, Sunday Night Football, all that stuff. I think it's an exciting thing to see. So, yes, I do care. I will be watching, and hopefully my Cowboys are on a lot of primetime games this year.
I'll say this. I'll comment on this, even though we're not supposed to, because do you care? But I'm gonna. How interesting would it be if Dez signed with Philly and they? So you said the Vikings not necessarily. That's not known. It's not 100%, right?
I don't believe so. I think it was just a strong rumor that I had heard from multiple.
So it probably will happen. It probably will happen. But man, imagine that Dez Bryant in Philadelphia.
I think they would have to switch and put the Cowboys in that slot.
You would have to.
Yeah.
It's almost like they're waiting. Hey,
right. No, those ratings would be.
They're telling him today, Dez, you need to sign with somebody. We need to know. We need to know.
Right.
But yet, Thursday Night Football also, quick, just to mention this, because we're not going to be able to talk about this. Thursday Night Football kind of switching to a different format. There's going to be no more color rush, and there are going to be a lot more competitive games, I believe, on that schedule. So it should be interesting to see.
Color rush was kind of cool. I like that.
It was, but for some people that were colorblind, it was a little difficult for them.
Oh, okay.
So,
right.
Not that I don't know anybody that's colorblind. Not that matters at all. But this is Do You Care? So anything can happen. But yeah, so it should be interesting to see what the Thursday night schedule is. Since the last couple of years, it's been like we'll see Bengals and Bills or something. It's teams that not a lot of people necessarily care about. So so that's it for Do You Care? Coming up next, we're going to continue our mock draft. We're going to finish it off. We're going to tell you our sleepers. We're going to tell you about the teams that don't have a first-round selection. As well, we're going to dive into those teams. That is the Texans, Chiefs, and Rams. So coming up next on Cover 2 Podcast, more mock draft.
I think the New York Giants may look at themselves and go, okay, timeout. We love running back Barkley, but I just don't think Sam's going to drop. We know Buffalo's desperate. Arizona's desperate. Cleveland's desperate. There are another 4 teams that maybe not desperate, but they need a quarterback.
Sam Darnold might be the best playmaker in this draft at quarterback. It's an interesting case because I think that the Browns might really be a good fit for him. They're going to have to put up with some turnovers if they do take him, but he really would be an answer for a roster that has some weapons, but is looking for someone to provide that leadership, and he would be an interesting pairing with Hugh Jackson.
It's just that. I think just bigger, faster, stronger. That's kind of the perception that us college guys kind of talked about while we were in college, like, oh, we can't wait to get to the next level, but we have a lot of work to do, that kind of mindset. But talking to guys like Deshaun and like I mentioned, like Phillip Rivers, it's awesome to be able to talk to those guys and understand their mindset and just kind of realize that, I do have a ways to go, but at the same time, I'm right there. I'm right on the cusp of it, and I can't wait to get started.
Back here on the Cover 2 Podcast mock draft edition. We just got done with Do You Care? We've gone through the first 25 picks from each of us in the NFL draft. As a pen just hit me in the shoulder. And we're going to go through the rest of the first round real quick. Me and Jared are both going to list our next our last 7 picks in the first round. So I will begin with the Falcons at number 26. I believe they draft Daron Payne, the defensive tackle from Alabama. I think this is sort of not a homecoming. Will it be interesting to see Daron Payne play in Atlanta since they just won a national championship there and stuff. I think Daron Payne's a great player, and the Falcons do need some help on the defensive line, so it works out perfect. Number 27, Saints. I think they try to protect Drew Brees a little more by drafting Isaiah Wynn, offensive lineman. I think, just as I was saying, although I needed to start listing these players because I forgot what we were doing, I'll just finish up on this one. Isaiah Wynn, I think, is one of the better linemen in the draft, and Saints do need to bolster that offensive line. All right, just continuing. Steelers at 28 draft Tremaine Edwards, linebacker. 29, Jaguars draft Michael Gallup, wide receiver. Number 30, Vikings draft Orlando Brown, offensive tackle. 31, Patriots draft Ogbania Okoronkwo, outside linebacker from Oklahoma. And number 32, Eagles draft Darius Geis, Ryanbacker.
Wow.
Running back.
All right. So going back, number 26, the Atlanta Falcons. I have them taking a defensive tackle as well, but it's Taven Bryan from Florida. They did lose Dontari Poe, and I feel that they need to replace that pick. Number 27, I have the Saints taking Dallas Goedert, the tight end from South Dakota State. They have Coby Fleener, and they have Benjamin Watson, but those guys are both in the, more veterans in the kind of last couple of years of their career. So I think Drew Brees needs a big, strong tight end. Number 28, the Pittsburgh Steelers, I have them taking Rashaan Evans to replace Ryan Shazier. That's obviously a really sad story, but they do need a linebacker to replace him. Number 29, the Jacksonville Jaguars taking Hayden Hurst, another tight end from South Carolina. The Jaguars lost Mercedes Lewis, and they don't really have a number 1 tight end, so I think they need to replace that. Number 30, the Minnesota Vikings, they don't really have too many holes. They're a pretty good team, and since they signed Kirk Cousins to that ridiculous contract, they draft Isaiah Wynn, guard from Georgia, to shore up that offensive line and make sure Kirk Cousins stays on his feet. Number 31, the New England Patriots, with their second first-round pick, they take Jair Alexander, the cornerback from Clemson. They did lose Malcolm Butler, obviously, so I think they need to replace that. And number 32, the Philadelphia Eagles, another team that doesn't have a whole lot of holes, doesn't have many holes at all, and so they can basically take best player available. I think they take Sonny Mitchell, the running back from Georgia. They did lose, who did they lose? LeGarrette Blount, yeah, kind of their bruiser running back. So I think they pair Sonny Mitchell with their other 2 running backs.
They have Corey Clement.
Yes, Corey Clement. And then the running back from Miami that they signed last year, Jay Ajayi. So pair those 3 together, and that's a pretty good running back tandem right there.
Very good. Very good. So you kind of explained your picks a little bit.
I did, yes. Yeah. Go ahead.
So I'll dive into mine. So I mentioned with the Daron Payne, a lot like what you said with Dontari Poe going on, them needing to solidify defensive line. I think you picked Daron Payne. Saints need offensive linemen, so they draft Isaiah Wynn, who you had getting drafted by the Vikings. Steelers drafting Tremaine Edwards, kind of a similar thing that you said about Ryan Shazier. They need a linebacker to fill that spot. So they draft Tremaine Edwards. You have him going a little bit higher, but I just have him dropping just because of other players I have getting drafted. Michael Gallup. The Jaguars have now lost Allen Hurns and Allen Robinson, so I think they need some receiver help, although they extended Marquise Lee, and you expect Dede Westbrook to have a more promising year than he even did last year. I think you add another receiver to the group to improve that offense, but their offense wasn't too good. They were kind of run by their defense last year, one of the reasons they didn't end up getting to the Super Bowl. But nonetheless, Michael Gallup is going to get drafted by the Jaguars. Vikings with Orlando Brown. You had Isaiah Wynn. I wanted to go an offensive lineman, and I think they take a flyer on Orlando Brown. He had a bad NFL combine.
Really bad. One of the worst in combine history.
Exactly. But I think the Vikings, because you said they don't have a lot of holes, they go after a guy that has the potential who was a very high pick. I mean, this guy was potentially going to be like top 15. Has very bad combine. Guy had a bad day, it seems like, and I think the Vikings will take a flyer on him since I already have Isaiah Wynn getting drafted by the Saints. Patriots, who I'm telling you, I strongly believe they will not have this number 31 pick. By the end, I'm not going to say they're going to trade it, but if they do, I have them drafting the outside linebacker Okoronkwo from Oklahoma. Just need they need some help on that defense with the lost some players last year. I remember looking at that Patriots defense, especially the linebacker core, and besides Dante Hightower, I really didn't know who any of the players were. So draft some linebacker help. But I believe they will actually probably. You actually had them drafting Jair Alexander late. I had them drafting him at 23. I believe they will actually pick him later in that draft because I think they'll trade back that 23rd pick. So I think they will kind of pick him in a similar fashion you did. And then Darius Geis, you had Sony Michel, I had Darius Geis. I think Geis is a better running back. I think the Eagles, they replenished that running back core because they lost LeGarrette Blount. Similar reason.
Right, yeah. I think Geis is a better running back. I had Geis already gone by then, which is why I chose Sony Michel.
Yeah, so interesting. So there's our first round right there. I will post this, by the way, on our Cover 2 podcast, Twitter, and probably post on Instagram as well. But so there are our first 32. Now let's go on and move on to the Texans, Chiefs, and Rams. They don't have a pick in the first round. So who do we necessarily think that they'll be looking for as far as positions go? Jared, I'll let you start.
Right, yeah. So the Texans don't have a first-round pick because they traded that away in last year's draft to move up and get Deshaun Watson, who seems to be their franchise quarterback. Hopefully he can come back off that horrible ACL injury and be the man that they think he is. So the Texans, I think they need to shore up their offensive line. And even though, like you mentioned, I think this player had a horrible combine, he's so big and massive that he can, hopefully if he can get it together, he can be a staple on that line. Orlando Brown, the tackle from Oklahoma, I think he gets to stay in Texas and play for the Texans and hopefully, play a lot better than his tape has shown so far. But just, from his size-wise, he should be a first-round pick. The Chiefs also gave away their first-round pick this year when last year they traded for Patrick Mahomes, their franchise quarterback, who they are now going to start this year. I think they need a lot of help in the secondary. They traded away Marcus Peters, who's one of the best cornerbacks in the league. They did get Kendall Fuller, like I mentioned earlier on the show, from the Washington Redskins, even though Kendall Fuller is more of a slot cornerback. So I think they draft Isaiah Oliver, the cornerback from Colorado. He's long, lengthy, a really, really good cover guy, and I think he would fit well into that scheme. And then the LA Rams do not have a first-round pick because they traded that to the Patriots this offseason in order to get Brandon Cooks. And with the Rams loading up on defense, having all those players, Aqib Talib, Marcus Peters, getting Ndamukong Suh, they basically have an all-star defense. I think they can really focus on offense with their first couple picks in the draft. And even though I can see them going offensive line to help Jared Goff, I think they need a big red zone threat receiver or tight end. I think a lot of their receiving core right now is they're more smaller guys. They don't really have a guy that can go up and really catch jump balls. They obviously have Brandon Cooks, Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp. None of those guys are really big. So I'm predicting that they select Cortland Sutton, the wide receiver from SMU. He's 6'3", 218 pounds, and I think he would be their red zone guy. So those are the three players that I think that these teams will pick with their first picks in the second round.
So real quick, what do you have up on your computer right now? Do you have where they actually pick?
I will look that up right now.
Okay, yeah, look. But so you mentioned the Texans, they do need some offensive line help. And they obviously had Tyrann Mathieu. They kind of add J.J. Watt back into their defense too in a way. So the defense would be solid. So I'm going to more focus on offense with them. I believe they'll draft Connor Williams, tackle from Texas.
Okay.
Because I have Orlando Brown getting drafted by the Vikings. I was thinking about Brown for this one too when I was doing the mock draft, but I had him going to the Vikings. So I'll go with next best lineman, Connor Williams. Potentially as the best possible pick there for the Texans. Chiefs, interesting offseason, obviously, because they give away Alex Smith. They give away Marcus Peters. We'll see what happens with Eric Berry and stuff. It seems like he gets injured every single year. But I believe they go after a corner as well. I don't have a name right now, just because I had a bunch of names, but I don't have a corner here, so I don't want to look it up. But I think they just need to focus on defense, because when I look at what they need corners, they need defensive linemen, they need edge rushers, they need a lot. So I'm not going to pick a specific player there, and even they need safety as well. So they need help on defense, so I expect them to draft someone on the defense. Rams, like you mentioned, big receiver would obviously help, but they also did lose Alec Ogletree in this. They traded him to the New York Giants. So I could see them drafting an inside linebacker. You mentioned the offensive line, specifically a center they need. And I wouldn't be surprised if they draft a running back to sit behind Todd Gurley as well. So interesting picks there. I don't necessarily know where like you mentioned, I don't necessarily know where these teams pick in the second or third rounds, but nonetheless, there's some stuff to go by there to see who they possibly might draft coming up.
I got you right here.
All right, so where are they going?
Wow, man, these teams they're down the list. The Chiefs, their first pick is in the second round, number 22. That's actually 54th overall.
Oh, wow.
So their first pick isn't until number 54 in the draft. And then we have, the the Texans and the Rams do not have first or second round picks. Oh, man. That is pretty amazing.
It is.
So we're going to the third round, and the Texans finally get their first pick in the third round, number 4 overall. That's number 68. So they don't get their first pick until number 68.
Man.
Right, and then the Los Angeles Rams
keep on going back.
I'm still going. The Rams do not have a first round pick. The Rams don't have a pick in the first 3 rounds.
Unbelievable.
Wow. We have to go.
This is why we want to look this up, though. This is amazing.
Wow. The Rams get their first pick in the 4th round. Number 11 in the 4th round. That's pretty amazing.
This is why you do math, kids, right here.
Hey, but you know what? I think that's why the Rams were so aggressive in free agency, because they knew that they weren't going to have many picks. So, I think they did an outstanding job in free agency filling needs and obviously getting big-name players. So
so I could also see these 3 teams we mentioned also trading up. I mean, the Rams, you almost have to trade up at least to the 3rd round, right? You can't wait till the 4th round. And Texans and Chiefs being in the 60 and 50 ranges, you move up a little bit if they want a certain player. Maybe they want, I don't know, whatever. But I could see all 3 of these teams trading up in this draft too. I've talked about trading up a lot. So, yeah, interesting there with the Rams. They did not know they had to wait all the way to the 4th round. Glad I didn't pick a certain player to go to them.
Yeah, because good luck.
Yeah, so it worked out that I only picked the Texans pick. But, so nonetheless, just to review, teams that I possibly think could trade up in this draft, just to go over it again. Broncos could trade back. 49ers could trade back. Cardinals could trade back. These are all in my opinion. Chargers, Patriots. I strongly, if I had to pick one, I think the Patriots strongly do not end up with 2 picks in the first round. I think they'll end up with just 1, and even a little later than their 31 or their 23rd picks. Jared, what were your trades that you possibly think could happen?
So once again, I think it was in the beginning, basically the top 5.
Yeah.
I had the Giants potentially trading out the number 2 spot, and the Broncos possibly trading out the number 5 spot. I think everyone else, depending on how it goes, who really knows? But the Dolphins, the Bills could trade up, and those could be the 2 trade partners with the Giants and the Broncos. But other than that, I don't see too many other teams moving up to get a quarterback. I mean, the Patriots have 2 first-round picks, so maybe they package those and move up for a Mason Rudolph or something like that. I'm not sure that Bill Belichick would want to do that and risk those picks. Listen, the Cardinals need a quarterback, so do they move up or do they stay at 15? The Chargers, even though they have Phillip Rivers, he's on his last year or 2, they move up. So there's multiple teams that could, but realistically, in my opinion, the 2 most likely teams are the Giants and the Broncos. I think those are the 2 that I could see happening, and I would not be surprised at all.
Well, so we didn't go over our last 7 picks. You don't believe any of the last 7 picks will do it either? I
No,
didn't.
I don't, not at all. I think the last 7, I mean, listen, the last 7 teams all made the playoffs, and it's not that they don't need improvements on their roster. It's just I don't believe that those teams need to sacrifice other picks in order to, significantly get better. They were in the playoffs for a reason, especially the Patriots and the Eagles and the Vikings. So those teams, I think, can stand pat and just pick where they are.
Fair enough. All right, so let's move on to a different kind of topic here, talking about our draft guys. So we're going to talk about sleepers and possible busts.
Oh,
now.
boy.
So, Jared, you can say however many you want for either one. But so I have 3. Well, you want me to start? Or,
yeah, go ahead.
Okay,
go right
so I'll start with sleepers. We'll be a little nicer in the beginning of this. So it's 3 sleepers, all offensive skill players for me. 1, Ronald Jones II, running back from USC. I think this guy is severely underrated, guys. I see him going in the 2nd round, but I think he is a first-round talent. I think people are sleeping on him because Sam Darnold was over there in USC, and people forget that there was running backs and receivers there too. So I think he is definitely a sleeper. Watch out for him. I also believe another running back, Sonny Michel. Who I did not have getting picked in the 1st round. You had him getting picked by the Eagles. I think Sonny Michel's another good running back. Him and Nick Chubb combined at Georgia to create that tandem that got them all the way to the national championship. So I believe Sonny Michel is another one. And Christian Kirk, wide receiver out of Texas A&M. Watch out for these teams picking a wide receiver in the 1st round as well for him, but I think he's a sleeper. I think he's going to be a really good player. Did not have him go in the 1st round. That was not because I wanted to say he was going to be a sleeper later, but just thought that these other receivers would more likely fit better with certain teams. But Christian Kirk, big guy, good receiver, was one of the more talented players in that Texas A&M team last year. So I'm going with all offensive skill players for my sleepers. Jared, take it away. Who should we not sleep on?
So first, my running back from, I believe he's from NC State, Nyheim Hines. Ooh. He's 5'8". He's a small running back. He's like a Sproles. Okay. Right? But I think he's so shifty. He can do a lot for you in the running back game. Obviously, he's not going to be a guy that maybe takes runs up the middle too much, but you can put him in the slot. You can do pitches and reverses with him. He plays special teams. I think he's a really, really versatile player. My second pick is also another skill player, Deontay Burnett, the receiver from USC. Another small receiver. I believe he's like 5'9", so he's not tall, 5'9", 5'10", but I think he's a really, really good slot player. Great hands. He catches everything that Sam Darnold basically threw his way. So I think he's another guy that teams can get in maybe the 2nd round and can be only because I'm a Cowboys fan, a Cole Beasley or a Wes Welker guy that can be in the slot and be a mismatch for those guys. And then I'm gonna go here, corner, Dante Jackson from LSU. He's a 5'11", 175, but he's really, really lengthy. I don't think he gets enough attention.
Not really 5'11", no way.
Right. I don't think he gets a lot of attention because of Denzel Ward, the cornerback from Ohio State, Josh Jackson from Iowa. I think those guys are the top 2 cornerbacks. But I think that Dante Jackson is a sleeper guy to keep your name on. An eye on, and I think he will eventually be a starter in year 1 for an NFL team.
There you go. Okay, who was I don't know how to pronounce the guy's name. The linebacker from, or maybe he's defensive lineman from USC. Starts with an N.
Yes, I will have to look that up right now.
Yeah, that's another guy. I'll pick one defensive guy here. I think he's another guy that people should sleep on. Had a very good combine. So.
Right. We have a lot of USC guys. Ronald Jones, you stole my guy. I was going to pick him. I think
you can still say him, Jared.
No, he is. He is. I think one of the fastest players, not even running backs, players in the draft. And I think whoever gets him, trust me, if this guy gets in the open field, he's gone. He can do punt returns, kick returns, but obviously in the running game, I think he's going to be one of the steals of the draft. I think he could be a potential late 1st round pick, like the Eagles potentially getting him, but I think he will go somewhere in the mid-2nd round for sure. There's no way he lasts to the 3rd round. He's way too talented.
Yeah, Jones was a good running back for USC. I remember watching a couple of their games, and just he brought that USC running back, that feeling of the Reggie Bush, the Lendell Whites back to USC a little bit. So that was very interesting. So now we got to be a little mean, Jared. We got to be a little mean and give away some busts. So I will start. I'm going big one. Start off. I don't want to say this guy's going to be a bust, but I don't think he's going to be as good as people projected. Josh Allen. I think Josh Allen will be a little bit of a bust pick. It's one of the reasons I had him moving down, although I think it made sense that Darnold, Rosen, and Mayfield went 1, 2, 3. We both agreed on that anyways. But I do believe Josh Allen is not going to be as good as people have said. I get he has a big arm, but Wyoming was not North Dakota State, and a lot of people want to compare him to Carson Wentz. I just don't think that's a very smart thing to do, considering that Carson Wentz, North Dakota State was an amazing team, and they could beat most FBS teams, even though they were an FCS team. Wyoming was just Wyoming, and I think Allen kind of took advantage, and his stats are inflated because of all that stuff. So that's one that jumps off the list for me. I was thinking of someone, and I cannot think of him, so Jared, I'll let you go, and I'll try to remember that player.
Yeah, I think this player could be a bust, and I hate to say it because I like him as a player. I just don't feel that he will get a fair opportunity at this position, and I feel that eventually he will get pushed to another position. Lamar Jackson. I listen, in college, he was a lightning rod. There were times where you saw him, throw it with accuracy, but for the most part, he used his legs like Michael Vick did when Michael Vick came into the league, primarily to basically create plays. So I'm not so sure, one, that Jackson has the accuracy, the consistent accuracy to make NFL throws, and number two, he's more of a slim guy, like an RG3. So he takes a couple hits. And listen, this isn't college anymore. These are grown men now hitting you, and I think it's going to be a little different story for him. So unfortunately, I don't see him in a pro-style NFL system, and unfortunately, I don't think it's going to work out for him enough. Another quarterback that I think is going to be a bust, and this has nothing to do with UCLA itself, Josh Rosen.
I somehow knew you were going to say that.
I think Josh Rosen will be somewhat of a bust, and I think it's more because of his personality and because of his character. There's been a lot of talk that he's another guy that could potentially go to one of the New York teams, like the Jets or the Giants or even Buffalo.
Because you had him getting drafted number 2.
Yes, I do, because I think he has the personality to handle. He's got tough, thick skin, but I think that could also come back and haunt him because there's been reports and rumors that he wasn't necessarily the best teammate. And as a quarterback, even if you don't want to be, you need to be a leader. Quarterbacks lead by example. It's just the way it is in this game. And I'm not so sure that he will be able to bond and gel with his teammates like a team will want him to. And therefore, I think things will somewhat derail and fall off for him. So he has the talent. I'm not questioning that at all. I'm questioning more of his mental state, and I don't know that he will be able to fit in with guys. I think there's going to be a lot of butting heads and arguments, and I think that's going to translate to his play on the field.
Who did you have him getting drafted in your mock draft?
Number 2 to the Giants. No, I'm sorry. Rosen, number 5 to the Broncos.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So, yeah, he doesn't necessarily. You have Demaryius Thomas, but so I have him playing with Odell Beckham Jr., which would be interesting, or potentially Des Bryant.
Oh, that's not. That's not.
But so okay, I remembered mine, and this one, I don't necessarily know where people think this guy's gonna get drafted, but I just think people need to use the word that you say, pump the brakes a little bit on this guy. Shaquem Griffin.
Yes, from Central Florida.
Great story. Obviously, no hand on his right hand, prosthetic arm with the whole bench press. Watching him play catch the balls in the drills in the combine was amazing. But let's pump the brakes. I think people are overrating him a little bit because of how good of a story it is. People want to see him get drafted higher. I believe he's even at the NFL draft. He's going to be there.
I'm not a fan of that.
Yeah, I don't like that either.
And only because I don't think he'll get drafted in the first round, and I think it's going to be a disappointment. I think it's a great story. I think he's a great kid. I think he can be a good special teams guy, like you were saying. But yeah, for him to go to the draft, I don't see a team picking him in the first round, and I think he's going to have to sit in that waiting room for a long time and someone get disappointed. So I don't like seeing guys get disappointed like that. At least if he were at home, he can be behind closed doors and that type of thing.
Well, that's what I'm kind of trying to say too. I think that we are setting this guy up for failure,
right,
in a way. So I don't necessarily know that's the way to do it. I think he's going to get drafted, obviously. We're not saying he's not going to get drafted, but I think I saw something before the whole combine that he was going to get drafted in like the 5th round.
Oh, wow.
And now I saw that it was like, it's all the way up to 1st. And I'm like, and I might be wrong on the 5th round thing. It might have been a little earlier rounds, but it wasn't 1st round. And I just think this is I'm not saying he's going to be a bust. I think he could be a good NFL player. He could, for all I know, be a starting linebacker in the league. But I just think the whole thing with the 40 time and the bench press and him just having only one hand on his right hand, I think that made him a little bit overrated. I think he'll be a good NFL player. I'm not necessarily saying he's going to be a bust because I don't think he'll get drafted high. But just wanted to throw that out there because I think people need to slow down on this dude. It's a good story, but you don't need to be drafted in the draft. Like Jared says, kind of embarrassing the guy a little bit.
Right.
Who else do you know is actually at the draft? Because it didn't seem like a lot of people compared to other years were going to be at.
I believe there's 20-plus players. I know just about all the top quarterbacks.
I think they added a couple.
Yes.
So all the quarterbacks are going to be there?
I'm almost certain that all the quarterbacks will be there. Calvin Ridley will be there. Roquan Smith, Tremaine Edmonds. Yeah, the top 15 players will be there for sure. They want to get, the star guys, the buzz people there. So, there's certain instances where I remember back when Mark Sanchez was getting drafted and he ended up going 5th overall to the Jets and he stayed at home. The NFL, I'm sure, wanted him there, right? Because that's more publicity and that type of thing. But he stayed home. But the majority of the time, the top draft picks, if you have a pretty good idea or if you're going to go in the 1st round, more likely than not, you will attend the NFL draft, and go and shake Roger Goodell's hand and get all that media attention and spotlight. And then, there's some instances where if you do decide to stay home, they will send a camera crew to your house so that they can film everything, and then when you do get drafted, they'll show the video of you celebrating with your family and that type of thing. So that's really cool to see as well. Another thing that's interesting, and I think sometimes that deters players from not going to the draft, is that it seems it's a great idea and it's a good time and everything, but from what I heard, the NFL only gives these players like 2 tickets or something. Like they only put up basically like their parents. It's not like they get to bring their entire family with them, and I understand it because some people have bigger families than others. Yeah. So some people want to be at home with their family, and maybe they have 40 or 50 family members that want to be there, and it's tough to fly everyone to Dallas or wherever the NFL draft is. So I understand why there's some players who would prefer to stay home and be with their entire family as opposed to saying, oh, okay, I can only bring 5 people with me. You know what I mean? So I get why some people choose not to go as well.
So final thought time as we're done with the whole mock draft section of this podcast. I will go first. My final thought is excited. Obviously, the draft is 8 days away from when we're recording this. But I'm excited to see what the Cardinals do because this is one of those years where there's not a lot of questions with the Cardinals this year, and being a Cardinals fan, to see if we draft a quarterback, to see if we draft a defensive player, a wide receiver. Like last year, I remember with Hassan Reddick, there was thoughts that we might draft a player like that, but there was also the quarterback talk. But I think even more this year because Carson Palmer's gone and Sam Bradford's there, and we don't really have a mainstay there at quarterback. I think the talks have been, even ramped up even more. And it'd just be interesting to see, as a Cardinals fan, what we do. New coach, new offensive coordinator, and obviously we're going to have a new quarterback next year in Sam Bradford. So I'm excited for sure.
Yeah, my final thought is this is the first draft in years that I can remember there being 5 potential first-round draft pick quarterbacks.
Yes.
It doesn't happen often, and like I mentioned at the top of the show, when that does happen, because quarterbacks they are above and beyond everyone else. Like I said, Saquon Barkley and just about any other draft would be the first-round pick, but because these quarterbacks are franchise-type guys, these other, amazing players like Saquon Barkley and the Quentin Nelsons of the world and the Derwin James, they're going to get pushed down. So if you're a team in the 10 to 15 range, you could potentially be getting a top 5 player. And I think that's really cool, with all the trades that are going to potentially happen. So I think I picked 5 quarterbacks to go in the first round, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And I think that, I'm not sure if that's a record or if that ties a record, but it will be very, very interesting to see. I'll tell you, I'll be glued to the TV, having NFL Network and ESPN. I like to watch both. But it will be cool to see all these quarterbacks go, and then to see these other talented players drop to other teams.
Yes. Well, there you go. You hear the music. Jared and I are excited about the draft. We want to get a full week preparation in there. Next week, if anything, any trades go down or anything like that, we will notify you guys, and we will change up maybe a little bit of our mock draft. But as far as today goes, good mock draft, Jared. Fun time, obviously doing the full NFL show for the first time in a while. So we'll be back next week. Once again, I'm Nick Nina.
I'm Jared Smith,
and this has been the Cover 2 Podcast.